Good morning again, friends. Today we'll be talking about Whispers from Eternity number 74, which is Be Thou the General in My Invasion of Ignorance. And this is a dear Whispers to me because I used it for many months when I was going through a period of some intensity in my life. Like I promised in the previous ones, I recognized that there seems to be a pattern in some of the ones that I've done before, which is that there's a bit of intensity and purification to be had. And last week we touched in on that so sweet, so beautiful, so pure prayer demand of demanding to be intoxicated with the wine of devotion. And this week we're swinging a little bit to the other side of the spectrum and demanding that God be thou the general in my invasion of ignorance. But it's sweet nonetheless, and it carries with it all the devotional ardor of any of the poems, really. And so let's try and tune into this not just from a perspective of fiery will, which sometimes I can lead a little too strongly with, but with the openness of the heart. And let's really try and feel this in our hearts together. So I'll read it first. Let's begin just by closing our eyes and centering our consciousness in the heart, and feel that you're directing the lotus of your heart's awareness upwards towards the spiritual eye in self-offering, in devotional yearning, which is in fact all these prayers are just an expression of that yearning. I bled, spreading thy name, and for thy name's sake I will ever bleed. With bloody limbs, broken body, wounded features, and bearing the thorn crown of derision, yet like a mighty warrior will I fight undismayed, even there where the skirmish is thickest. With the sword of calmness, I will stand firm against the hands of persecution. My disciplined armies of true aspiration, blowing trumpets in thy name, now march in triumph to seize the dark kingdom of God-denying souls. No matter how many blows I receive, and no matter how often the swords of persecution pierce my heart, I am content in the realization that thou knowest my craving to spread thy name. I will wear my tribulations not as scars, but as medals given for courage, and as inspirations to strive ever harder in my fight against ignorance. O Lord, help me conquer darkness with thy golden message of light. Be thou ever the general in my invasion of the continent of ignorance. Isn't that beautiful? This reminds me, of course, of many things, but where I think I'd like to begin with is actually, of course, what a great honor it is to serve God. What a great honor it is to fight for God's light and to put ourselves on the line for our Guru. Asha made the point to me once that, if someone is only hired to help you, they may come and they may clean your house or they may help you with your necessities, but when they go home at the end of the day, your problems are yours and their problems are theirs. And that their energy and their commitment to your cause ends when their salary ends, so to speak. And they might be, a dear friend while they're on the clock, but as soon as it's off, there's like the division of commitment. But a friend will embrace your cause as their own. They will fight for your name as they would fight for their own. And, this is beautifully expressed, for example, in Shakespeare's Henry V, in that famous St. Crispin's Day speech, where on the eve of a great battle, the King of England is rallying his armies, and he says to them, Any one of you who sheds his blood with me today shall be my brother. And in that commitment, that mutual shared commitment to an ideal or to a shared aspiration, there becomes brotherhood in committing ourselves to a singular cause. And then later on in that speech of Henry V, he says that later on in the years after we have won this fight, in years and years, from now, you will all raise your sleeves with pride and you will say, "These wounds I bore on St. Crispian's Day." And it's a very stirring speech in that play, but it holds so true that there is such I think a pride, not an egoic pride, but like a soul pride, that comes when we stand for righteousness even against the forces of darkness, even in the face of seemingly unsurmountable odds, because it proves to us our own dedication. It proves to us our own courage, our own commitment to that cause, to the divine. And so this prayer is really beautiful to me because it's sort of taking that aspiration and that nobility, but to the highest level. And not just declaring loyalty to a king or to a country or to your brothers, but loyalty to God and to the great conquest of ignorance, which is, of course, the mission of the masters. And so if we want to be friends of the masters, we need to take up their mission and we need to fight for their fight. We need to carry their banner into battle. And as he says in the very beginning, bleed, spreading their name. So now let's take this section by section, and because of our technical errors, we might not be able to go in as deeply as in some of the other classes, but we'll still have some fun. So the first section, I bled, spreading thy name, and for thy name's sake I will ever bleed. I'm going to stop myself right there actually, because I just want to point out that this, I don't think, is emphasizing like bloody martyrdom. But I think the emphasis needs to be on the willingness to sacrifice your very essence. Because our blood is like that force which sustains our body. It's like the life force that moves through our veins, that animates our tissues, that rejuvenates our body cells. And to say that I will give my blood for you, it's like there's no kind of greater material commitment. Just to say, I will sacrifice everything that I am for this cause. And so he says, I bled, spreading thy name, meaning that I have already committed myself to that extent. And for thy name's sake, I will ever bleed. And again, don't think this is, the acceptance of some suffering, but this is a great joy. To be able to say, I will continuously offer myself in complete sincerity, no matter the cost. I will pledge myself in body, mind, and soul to help further your mission of spreading the divine light to all. Then he goes on, with bloody limbs, broken body, wounded features, and bearing the thorn crown of derision, yet, like a mighty warrior, will I fight undismayed, even there where the skirmish is thickest. This whole prayer is such an incredible invitation to a fearless attitude of mind, because he's describing for us a very frightening image. Bloody limbs, broken body, wounded features. I mean, he's describing a warrior barely clinging to life and bearing the thorn crown of derision. So he's saying these obstacles that we'll face won't just be bodily harm, won't just be suffering on that level, but we may face criticism and undeserved criticism from other people, but we will wear that as a thorn crown. And then yet even still, like a mighty warrior, will fight undismayed, even there where that skirmish is thickest. I would meditate on these lines when I was really in the thick skirmish of my own life. And I would try to raise my energy to accepting that that's really the commitment of my heart. Because, on paper, it's easy to say, oh Lord, I want only you, I'll give anything to you. But then when push comes to shove, how far are we ready to go? How much are we willing to sacrifice in the name of our Guru or in the name of God? And so this description is a beautiful invitation to remember that our willingness to serve God is infinite, And that actually the more we commit to serving Him, the more joy we'll feel. With the sword of calmness, I will stand firm against the hands of persecution. Now this is interesting to me. This is actually the second prayer demand that I'm aware of that he connects calmness with swords, which I think is just very interesting, and it's something that I should continue to meditate on. But when he says, with the sword of calmness I will stand firm against the hands of persecution, I think because when we lose our sense of calmness, when persecution comes, we begin to develop self-pity. We think, why me? I don't deserve this. What have I ever done? But when we can remain calm, then we can remain in the fight, so to speak, and we can remain undismayed when those persecutions come to us. And so when you pray with this demand, try and bring yourself into a state of calmness, and then use that divine calmness like a sword to sever your misunderstandings and to stand firm in your resolution to continue in giving to the Lord instead of demanding that you be taken care of. Though, of course, there's nothing wrong with being taken care of from Divine Mother. My disciplined armies of true aspiration, blowing trumpets in thy name, now march in triumph to seize the dark kingdom of God-denying souls. Something that is really beneficial and worthwhile doing, which this sentence inspires me to think about, is to really introspect and to go inside and find for yourself who those warriors of light are within you. In the Mahabharata, there are two armies which represent the forces of light, the forces drawing us back to our home in God, and there are forces of darkness, those tendencies within us that are drawing our consciousness back into materialism and into ego. And they come together in a great and mighty clash. But within each of us, there are heroes, and within each of us, there are villains. And it's like that story of the Native American father who tells his son, within each of you there is a wolf, or there's two wolves, one a wolf of light and of beauty and of harmony and kindness, and the other is selfishness and greed and anger, and they are constantly at war. And the boy says, well, Father, which one will win? And he says, the wolf which you feed. And so by introspection, by recognizing within yourself which of these warrior tendencies are actually your heroes, is very beneficial. And then recognizing them as such and cultivating them, calling upon them like a good general would when a task is necessary that one of them would be particularly well suited for, call on them to come in and help you. Just the other day, I found myself coming face to face with a very small bad habit, and I had an opportunity to overcome it. And I consciously tried to conjure all the power of my will in a focused moment to destroy that bad habit. And the reason I emphasize this is because I have grown to realize that willpower is one of my great heroes in my divine army, and that when I can marshal him and focus him, he can do great things for me. And so in that moment, when I came face to face with a negative habit which was not serving me, I called upon my divine hero, willpower, to come and do battle. And I don't know if I've necessarily overcome that habit, but I've taken a step in the right direction. Now here's the part that I really wanted to get to. No matter how many blows I receive, and no matter how often the swords of persecution pierce my heart, I am content in the realization that Thou knowest my craving to spread Thy name. Wow, that is worth holding dear to your heart and meditating with, no matter how many blows I receive, and no matter how often the swords of persecution pierce my heart. I am content in the realization that thou knowest my craving to spread thy name. I almost don't even know where to begin. I feel like this speaks so loudly for itself. But all I'll emphasize is this needs to become a sincere understanding, a sincere experience of these words, not just a platitude. That we can't just tell our minds, oh, no matter how hard I get pummeled or how many times my heart is pierced by persecution and disappointment, I'm content, I'm content, I'm content. We have to experience that. But isn't that an incredible promise of potential? I am content in the realization that thou knowest my craving to spread thy name. I had this beautiful moment with Master over the Christmas season where I was in meditation and I was feeling some sorrow in my heart. And I was grieving a little bit because I felt like I had gone through a series of tests that no one had borne witness to. And the little ego in me was sad about that because I felt like I had fought courageously and I had put out a tremendous amount of energy and effort, but no one would ever know but me. And I wasn't even sure that I had won the fight. I just knew that I had struggled and strained and tried and bled, as he says in this poem. And I was sitting there feeling a little bit defeated and a little bit lonely in this, when suddenly, at the end of my meditation, I felt Master's presence very strongly in my heart, and I felt him tell me that he knew, because he had been with me through every single trial. He fought through me. He suffered through me. He was there with me, present in every single moment that I had been. And so it was such a beautiful moment because I also realized, just like it says in this sentence, that Master knew the sincerity of my heart, and he knew why I had gone through it and why I would continue to go through it if necessary, because I wanted to spread his name, because he's my guru, because his mission is my mission. And feeling that reassurance that he knew my heart healed that wound for me, and it made it all worth it. And just a few weeks later, I was sitting in this feeling of self-offering to Master regardless of outer circumstances, and I felt words come to me that expressed how even at the end of my life, if I have nothing left to show for myself except for sincerity of heart and the scars on my heart, then that will be enough, because you'll know why I fought. And that is a reassurance that can never be taken away. That's a reassurance, that's a courage that will never leave you. Because in fact, it only grows the stronger with your adversity. It only grows more powerful. And now this is my favorite line of the whole prayer. I will wear my tribulations not as scars, but as medals given for courage, and as inspirations to strive ever harder in my fight against ignorance. Oh man, let us all meditate on that sentence. Let's use that as our waking sentence every day. I will wear my tribulations not as scars, but as medals given for courage. Imagine if you could truly do that. Just imagine for a moment if the Master appeared to you and offered you a medal, just like they might offer to a courageous soldier, that you could pin on your chest. How would you wear that? You would wear that with pride. Just like in the Shakespeare speech, these wounds I bore on St. Crispian's Day. They'd become your most prized possession, wouldn't they? I will wear my tribulations not as scars, but as medals given for courage. Because God only gives us what we're able to take. And so if God gives you not just one serving of tribulation, not just one serving of trials and wounds, but if he gives you 10 servings, then you ought to wear that with a great joy, because that's God's confidence in you. a general would give his hardest missions to his greatest warriors. And when you succeeded, they would be your greatest joys, your deepest prides to say, I drew my sword for my guru, I fought for him, and perhaps I died for him. I tend to believe that, or I have reason to believe that I was with Master Yogananda in his previous incarnation as William the Conqueror. And whenever I think of him in that incarnation, my heart expands with this incredible gratitude and self-offering, this nobility that is almost hard to describe. And I read somewhere the Master said that that lifetime was an inferior lifetime, perhaps because he wasn't able to share the light of God as openly, and that he had to sort of be on the incognito. But I read that and my first thought was, not to me, Master. Not to me. I think when my soul finds liberation and I can go back through all the millions of incarnations, I think those moments in those incarnations, perhaps then and perhaps now, when my soul dedicated itself to service of Guru, to service of God, no matter the consequences, no matter the obstacles, I think those will be the moments that will wear like medals of great honor, that will say, that made everything worth it. But we are now in a new age. We're in Dwapara Yuga, where the war is no longer fought with steel and shields, but is fought with energy and magnetism. And so, friends, let's join together in the great army of our Guru, of this lineage of self-realized masters, to conquer this new age of Dwapara Yuga on behalf of God, Christ, and the Masters, bringing in this new wave of light. O Lord, help me conquer darkness with thy golden message of light. Be thou ever the general in my invasion of the continent of ignorance. God bless you, friends. Have a blessed week.